Hello people and welcome to Is a Recording. I'm your host Kyle Duffy. If you're a first time listener, thanks for clicking on the episode and hope you enjoy. If you're a returning listener, thanks for coming back. I do appreciate it. If you have listened to me before, you will know that I tend to talk movies and TV. However, today's episode is going to be a little bit different. I've been trying to branch out a bit more and interview more guests on the podcast, and today I'm very pleased to be joined by an up-and-coming comedian from Mayo. I feel very lucky to talk to this man today as he's a native of Castlebar, like myself, and he's going to be performing in the Royal Theatre Castlebar this Christmas on the 22nd of December. When we come back, I talk to stand-up comic Ger Staunton. I'm joined now by stand-up comedian Ger Staunton from Castlebar. Ger, thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having me, Kyle.
So tell me a bit more about this upcoming stand-up special that's going to be taking place on the 22nd of December in the Royal Theatre.
That's it, yeah. Booked it in there a few months ago. We're going for the big one.
Going for the big one. I like that.
Big one. Yeah, it's like Westlife playing Sligo. Yeah,
Perfect.
This is the homecoming. I booked it in thinking, look, we might have a few people around for the Christmas. So it's something to do, isn't it? It'll be myself and my mate Martin Angolo is opening on the night. He did the Linen Hall with me a couple of times. He's down in Bridge Street doing Castlebar Comedy Club a few times with me. And he's great, yes. And he's a good excuse to go for pints with. So basically the show is an excuse for myself and my mate to go drinking together in Castlebar. It's
always nice to be doing gigs with people you get along with, because I know sometimes it might be the case that you're going on a long-term gig or going on tour and you can't stand the person, so it's great to know that you'll be having pints with your friend.
That's it. I mean, we've done so much traveling and stuff and you meet so many acts, and like, they're not, just because you don't gig with them regularly doesn't mean you hate them, but there are acts that we've just kind of refined it down where, you know, you get a nice gig and you ring one of your mates and go, here, will you open for me for this? And he'd do the same with me. And there's a couple of us, I met Keith as well, Keith Fox, he's a great actor, and we do shows together where we just ring it. Like the promoter might be saying, will you come down and do this gig? And I'd be like, yeah, if you book Keith, it will. And you just write in a drinking partner for yourself to make sure that it's going to be a bit of crack. But most of this crack is traveling with people, sharing hotels with people, trains and cars and planes. So yeah, if you don't get on with them, it's a long old drive.
I'm sure it can be a very tense journey on the train or in the car, especially if you had an argument the night before or in the hotel going to the stand-up gig.
Or on the way back when someone hasn't done well at the gig and the other person has. That's quite a journey. It's a fun one.
The envy must be very big in the car.
It's not even envy. I think it just turns straight into hate.
You skip envy straight to hate.
Straight to hate. Just despise the person for doing well. And you're like, oh, that was that audience. They just didn't like me. You got away lightly there that night.
Excuses. Looking at, because I do want to get on to some of the comedians you have worked with, but looking at comedians that maybe inspired you to start down this journey and start down this career path, you know, there's endless comedians to choose from, to take inspiration from. Who would you say kind of inspired your act and inspires you when you're writing?
When writing, so it's a different thing. The inspiration to do it in the first place was probably very different to the writing inspiration and stuff. With that, I'm listening, and that always changes, which I guess is a good thing. You just keep throwing different things into the pot to keep it fresh. These days I'm listening to loads of American stand-ups. I'm listening to every time I drive, I just leave a Spotify playlist on of American stand-ups. So I've been listening to loads of like Nate Bargatze and Kyle Kinane and Sarah Silverman, and I just leave it kind of on shuffle, and randomly stuff comes up and I go, oh yeah, that's an interesting point of view. It's an interesting, and I think with the American stand-up, there's something about it that's very general. It's not like, I think sometimes in Ireland, in England, you tend to get stuff very specific to either cultural references or to that particular part of the world. Whereas in America, some of it can be shite, obviously. Some of it is like airline food. But then again, it's very broad as well. So there is room in there to inspire you when it comes to your own writing. So, but yeah, probably listening to Bill Burr and people like that. In England, maybe Sarah Millican. In Ireland, probably Tommy Tiernan, Darragh Breen, Dylan Moran. And they would have been the people that I would have watched as well growing up. Growing up, not doing comedy but wanting to, was probably more those last few, the Irish, because you just had more access to them. You saw them on the TV. Even Brendan Grace. Myself and my old man used to roar laughing at Brendan Grace all the time. We went back over lockdown and watched everything Dave Allen has done. I never saw him as a kid. I might have been a bit too young for him, but he's unreal. And then I suppose watching the likes of Bill Hicks when I was younger, when I was in college, that probably made me go, geez, I wouldn't mind giving that a shot sometime. But the problem is, if you watch somebody who's too good that makes you want to do it, you think, I can never do it. And then if you watch somebody die on their arse on stage, you go, geez, maybe I'll be able to do that. So there's a fine line between inspiration and a deterrent. If somebody is too good, you just go, there's no point in me ever even trying. But I think the last straw when I was thinking of doing it and I was reluctant was watching a guy absolutely die on stage. And like, I was standing there going, nothing bad is happening to him. Like, no one's throwing their drinks at him. You know, it's just a bit embarrassing, but what's the worst that can happen? If this is the worst that can happen, then fuck it, I might give it a shot. So it was actually that made me go, yeah, I'll do one.
So I just want to pick up on something you said there around the cultural differences with maybe, you know, Irish stand-up, English stand-up, and how it can get very niche. You know, I know from looking at your stuff online, you have travelled a bit abroad, and I just want to maybe ask, is there any show that you maybe done abroad that you found didn't land as much because the jokes are a bit niche for Irish audiences?
Yeah, probably early days, because I might have been a bit more naive, and I would rock into some place in Holland or Germany and just do the same set that I've been doing in Dublin. And you kind of quickly learn that they don't know who some people are. They don't know how some people talk and whatever. And that doesn't mean you can't do something specific, but sometimes you have to preempt it with a couple of references, a couple of samples. Like, you might go, okay, you don't need to know this part of Ireland, but the people do this kind of thing. And then you can go into your joke. Whereas early days, I was probably just launching into the joke and hoping for the best. So I think the travel does kind of help you to just widen your references a bit. But it's not a bad thing either, because like sometimes you'd be doing a gig in Dublin, you could be doing a gig in Temple Bar, and you'd be lucky to get 10 Irish people in the room. Anyway, it could be French, German, Brazilian, Spanish. So it's not a bad thing to have in your arsenal anyway, just to be able to expand out your references and to be able to slow down that little bit and explain things as you go into them. So I think the travel has actually kind of benefited me in that way more than anything else, in the whole make your material accessible to as many people as possible. And then once you put something up on YouTube, you don't know where that's going to be clicked. That might be clicked in Japan, it might be clicked in Westport, and you hope wherever it's clicked it's going to work. So I think it's not a bad thing if you're somebody who's starting off in comedy and you're a year or two in. It's not a bad thing to just imagine you're delivering to an audience from all over the world and see how it goes down in your head.
And in terms of stand-up gigs and maybe shows you've done with your set in general, have you ever found you've been surprised by how audiences took a joke in terms of, okay, this is something I do for the Irish crowd, but it's actually going over quite well here?
Yeah, that actually happened I was in Iraq last year, in Kurdistan, and it was basically someone asked me to do, I was doing shows in Dubai, and they said there's a 6th show, but it's in Iraq. But if you want to do the Dubai shows, you have to do this one as well. It was all part of a package. So I was like, yeah, fuck it, let's go to Iraq. What's the worst that can happen? And then...
Famous last words.
Yeah, I'd say a lot of people said that. I'm going to Iraq, what's the worst that can happen? And the morning of the gig, I had to go to some radio station to do it. It was like 6 o'clock in the morning, radio. And I drew the short straw from all the acts. And I had to get to this radio station. And while I was talking to them, there was 2 Kurdish people interviewing me, and they asked, what time is the show on tonight? And I was like, it's on at 9 o'clock. And they said, well, there's something you need to know about the Kurdish people, that they're never on time. If they see 9, they think, it's probably not going to start till 20 past. And I was like, I'm from Castlebar, I'm from Mayo. this is like for like, it's like you've twinned our towns here. Don't you worry. And I was surprised. I went up and I opened my set with like, none of you thought this was going to start on time. And they were all laughing. And I was like, you are from Castlebar. This is the same. We do the exact same thing back home. So yeah, I was surprised to see how alike we were and how the references, like I was talking to them about, you know, ways my dad would be saving money while we were growing up and stuff. And they were all like, yeah, no, we do that. There's people like literally from Kurdistan coming up to me going, yeah, my dad does that as well.
I find that so funny. Like you said, it's so like us. Like even just yesterday, I was trying to organize. You know, I'm going out for pints with my dad and my soon-to-be father-in-law today. But we were talking about what time to go to the pub, and you know, like it's a pure Irish thing as well. Like 6 means 6:30, 7 means 7:30. Yeah, around 6 doesn't mean 6.
You're not at all.
Whenever you feel like, just rock up. I'll probably be there on my second pint. Doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Whoever
is there at 6 is an idiot. Like, what?
Yeah.
What
why are you on time?
What are they thinking? Like, that's early. Like,
yeah.
And the thing about people never thinking something is going to start on time. Like, my dad was having a pint with me before one of my gigs in the Linen Hall a couple of years back. We were in Burns's having a pre-match pint. And I said, I'm going to shoot down because this starts at like 8:30 or whatever. Are you coming? And he was like, no, I'll have another pint. And I was like, but you're coming to the gig. And he was like, oh yeah, I'll go. But like, these things never start in time. And I was like, but I'm starting it. I'm telling you now that I'm going to be starting it. Like, you're talking to the person.
And even then, he probably didn't believe you. No. Listen, it won't start in time. And Grant, I'll finish this pint real quick. I'll be down.
Sure enough, 15 minutes into a story, and I hear mooching at the back, and it's him he's coming in like Larry David. Sorry, do you mind? Oh, sorry, do you mind if I? And I'm like, oh Christ, he was always going.
Go on, Ger, go on.
Yeah. So start that bit again, could you? I missed it.
I didn't hear you. Come on, go on.
Yeah, I was in Burns's.
Oh God, it's so funny. By the way, I just want to ask you something there, because you're talking about someone like your dad just shuffling in during the set. Does that like irk you? Does that get on your nerves? Because I know there's some audience members who that's a trademark for them. They'll get up during the set to go to the toilet, or they'll be in late. I remember going to the Lennon Hall to see Tommy Tiernan, and I went with my soon-to-be wife Leanne and my family as well. But I said to my mum, listen, don't get up during the set to go to the toilet. Don't laugh too loud. Don't try and interact, because I was like, this is the first time I'm seeing Tommy Tiernan live. Love him, and I don't want to have second-hand embarrassment. But she listened to me anyway, and she saw firsthand how a heckler is dealt with, because there was some woman. This was like when Tommy Tiernan went away to Canada to try improv, and he came back and he was doing the small towns tour.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, and it was good. Like, it was great to see him on stage again, but it was obvious that he was just getting back into his act and seeing what worked. There was elements of improv, elements of his natural storytelling ability, and some woman shouted out, "Stay on track."
Christ.
Get back on track. And
maybe he's on track. Maybe he's making it look like he's not.
But I just think there's, and I want to get onto this in a minute, there's a stigma around stand-up. Oh, so you're just getting up on stage and telling a story. Like, no, he has a plan.
Well, this is why it's not funded as an art form. Like, if I was putting on a one-man theatre play, I can apply for tax exemption. But as a comedian, you can't. As a clown, you can, funnily enough. But not as a comedian, because as far as the government are concerned, we don't know what we're doing. We're just kind of making it up as we go along. So and that's the official line. So if that's the official line, then obviously other people are going to think of it that way. And also, if you're lucky enough to have a skill that makes it look like you're effortless, like you're just conversing from story to story, then the audience are going to think it's effortless, and they're going to think, well, he's just chatting, I can probably chime in here. Whereas you might be like, no, I really hope nobody talks, because I know exactly where the next bit is going.
Yeah.
But when it comes to just standing up, walking out, going to the toilet, going for a drink, I actually tell people at the start, do that. I don't mind you doing it, because I don't want somebody sitting there with either an empty pint glass or a full bladder, because they're not going to be concentrating. They're going to be worried about it.
You can see their eyes darting across.
Yeah, and they're not listening to you. Yeah, they're not listening. They're either thinking about going to the toilet, or they're thinking, when am I going to get another pint? So at the start of my shows, I'll normally say, if you need to leave for any reason, please do. And I won't talk to you. I'm not going to mention anything as you're leaving. Just go out because then people, you just see their shoulders drop and they're like, oh, okay, right, we can
Relief.
chill. Yeah, it's a bit of relief. And also it means that people can leave whenever they want. Whereas if you convince them that they should hold, then the average Irish bladder is about 40-45 minutes when they're drinking. You're going to get just this clear out of 10 lads running to the jacks after 40-45 minutes. And once one goes, they go, oh, sure, if he's going, I'll go. And if he goes, I'll go. And then you've got this big disruption in the middle of your show. Whereas if you told them at the start, go whenever you want, you might get one or two people leaving every now and then, but at least they're relaxed. And sometimes if someone is going to the bar, I'll just shout, here, get me a Guinness, and they'll come back with a pint for me.
Yeah.
So the more people that go, the better.
I think, my rule of thumb is the last time I saw Tommy Tiernan, it was in the Royal Theatre, and it was for tomfoolery. And another COVID story, I think I told you off air about like my COVID story over Christmas, but me and my mum love Tommy Tiernan. Like the hardest I've seen my mum laugh is during we were watching the DVD Bovinity, one of his stand-up specials, and like I think she laughed so hard that no sound came out.
Yeah, I know those ones, yeah.
But looking at the stand-up gig, we were all supposed to go together, and COVID hit my household, well, like my home house, and my mum got it, my dad got it, and my sister's boyfriend got it as well, I think. But looking at that stand-up special, I have a rule of thumb. There was intermission. I knew there'd be an intermission, and that's my rule of thumb. If I'm going for a drink, I'll go at intermission. But I suppose, like you said, it's probably good relief for people to know, okay, I can get up and walk around, and I'm not going to be ridiculed for it. I'm not going to be, I'm not going to miss out on anything. But I suppose going back to the Lennon Hall story, when he was in Lennon Hall, it's more noticeable if you walk out during a set in the Lennon Hall. Then
it's quieter. It's not a pub scenario. Yeah. It's a quieter room. It's a theatre. But even still, like I tend to not do any crowd interaction anyway. You know, if somebody, like, I basically just want to be the type of act that I would have been comfortable watching when I was sitting in an audience, you know, having never done comedy in my life. I was always sitting in the audience going, oh, please don't talk to me. Please don't look at me if I go to the toilet or if I go to the bar, you know, please just get on with your shtick.
Yeah.
So I want to be the act that I would have wanted to see back in the day. So I make a point of telling people, look, I'm not going to be chatting to you. Unless, like, if you don't shout at me, I won't shout at you. If you just leave me at it, I'll do my script. But if somebody does, you know, they might have a couple of points on them, they want to get involved, I don't mind. I'll get involved and have a bit of banter. I'm never trying to crush them with a put down or anything. We can have a bit of crack and then we move on. But in general, I kind of tell people, look, don't be shouting out. I won't talk to you. You don't talk to me. Go to the bar whenever you want to. This is a nice sort of comfortable environment. And if there's people out there with like bladder problems who have to go every 15 minutes. There's other people with drink problems who have to go every 15 minutes. For whatever reason, you have to leave the room. Fuck it, go for it. I'm not going to give you any hassle.
And I think, you know, like you said, some people go to a stand-up gig and they have this perception of, oh, someone's talking to me, I can talk back. But it's not a conversation, like you said. Like, I'm here to do a job. I'm here to tell my jokes. It's something I've worked on. It doesn't account for interacting with you. Like, I'm talking to you in a sense as well. But in terms of, because you talked about, you know, interactions and maybe heckles as well, do you find from touring and from gigging that the majority of interactions you have with, well, unwarranted interactions with crowds, is that Irish, or would you get it abroad as well?
Ireland mainly. Ireland and
I
England.
thought so.
Yeah. Basically, the country that drinks more tends to get involved more in the gig. Like in the States, there seems to be a big sort of unwritten understanding, a divide between audience and act, where they kind of treat you like you must be a big deal. We're the audience. We're going to sit here quietly and watch and applaud and take a photo with you after the gig. And there's a very big divide. Whereas in Ireland, to be fair, there's probably some funnier members of the audience than the act on stage. Like
Yeah.
everyone in the room is having the crack. Some of the heckles I got in Ireland have been funnier than what I was about to say anyway. So I'd often just welcome it. And it's rarely badness. It's rarely somebody going, I'm going to derail this guy now, watch. It's normally just somebody who wants to get involved, who sees maybe where you're going with your joke and throws in an extra punchline or something. And you're like, oh yeah, that's actually pretty good.
Yeah.
And I use that in my next show. And, and it can be a bit of crack. So in general, like 9 times out of 10, it's not badness. It's just somebody wants to get involved, and they might have had just enough drink to have the confidence to do it.
Sometimes I suppose it adds to your act, and like you said, if a heckle is funny enough, you can make a joke out of that and play with it for a bit. But yeah, like I suppose the reason I just stay quiet and I have that divide when it comes to stand-up gigs, and going to see stand-up live, is because I've seen the heckles online, and I've seen how demonstrative some people can be with their heckles. And, you know, like you said, I suppose most times, especially with Irish audiences, there's no malice intent behind it. It's like, oh, we're having the crack, and like, oh, I'm going to say something funny now so you can play with it a bit. But I suppose the reason I stay back is because I'm like, have these people not seen hecklers online and how this could go? How you could just be embarrassed on the spot in front of like thousands of people. Like you're almost putting yourself on stage and putting the spotlight on you, and it might not go the way you want it to go.
There was actually a guy recently. I did a gig in Dublin, and there was a guy heckling every act all night. This guy was heckling, like he was shouting out, and acts were trying to tell him to shut up because he wasn't even contributing, but he thought he was, and he thought he was being funny. And at the break, he went up to the promoter and he was like, can I get up? He was drunk. Can I get up and do 5 minutes? And your man was like, not a chance. You're ruining the night. You're not a comedian. But your man came over and he told me that, the promoter.
5 minutes. It's impressive that he thought he had 5 minutes.
The confidence in him, like the confidence. And I was like, oh, this guy's going to ruin my gig, because I was on at the end and I was doing a little bit of a longer set, and I knew that length set wasn't going to survive being silent in that room with him. I was like, fuck, what am I going to do? So I went back over to the promoter and said, is there any chance you'll give him that 5 minutes before I come on? Because at least then he can see how hard it is.
That's going to make you look a lot better.
But also he
you're
might
going to look good
up.
anyway, but yeah.
But also he might shut up.
Yeah.
So your man was like, are you sure? Because this could derail the night. And I was like, fuck it, he's ruining the night anyway. Let's do it. Let's teach him a lesson. So your man said from the stage, he goes, oh, we've got a special guest act, and he brought him up. And he absolutely curled up. He died on his hole. No one laughed at that, and he didn't know what to say. And for the rest of the night, he just sat with his head in his hands, quiet as a mouse. And it was a beautiful end to the night. We spent the next.
That's justice, right?
Yeah,
there.
and I didn't get one heckle for the night because he was done. He'd already ruined it on as many people as possible. But with the crowd work thing, I don't know if you've noticed this, but a few of us have been talking about it recently, that the crowds are getting more involved now than they ever did.
Yeah.
Comedians. And it's because during lockdown, comedians had to put out some content. They had to get videos out there. So every time they found a gig, whether it was a socially distanced gig or some of the festivals when things reopened, every time comedians got a clip, they put it up online. So even I was putting clips up online during lockdown, just to have some sort of presence on the scene when you couldn't really be gigging. But eventually you either run out of material or you don't want to give your material away. So you don't want punchlines out there for everyone to see. So people were only putting up crowd work clips, because crowd work isn't your real material. It's just a funny interaction you had with someone. So there's a trend now where you go on people's Instagrams or TikToks and it's only crowd work clips that they put up, crowd interaction clips. And for a lot of people, a lot of comedy fans, they're now thinking that this is comedy.
Yeah.
So they're going to the International Comedy Club in Dublin and they're like, oh, I've seen this on TikTok. I know how it works. I shout something at him and he shouts something at me. And you're like, no, there's still people out there telling jokes and doing stories. It's just you don't see it on a lot of your socials because people don't want to burn their material. But people halfway through a story will start shouting up at you, and you're like, no, this isn't one of those. This isn't the TikTok. It's just that because of lockdown, you've seen loads of that.
Yeah.
But the other stuff still exists.
And that, I know exactly what you're talking about, because my For You page is full of it on TikTok. And one comedian that pops up more than the rest is Matt Rife.
Yeah.
And
handsome man.
Yeah. Don't get me wrong. Handsome man, very good at what he does. But the majority of his gigs probably isn't crowd work. He's picking and choosing what he puts up. And I think, I don't know if it's across the world in stand-up comedy, but I suppose I've always seen a comedian's ability to do crowd work as probably a tester for them, and a test of their interpersonal ability and interpersonal skills in terms of handling maybe hecklers or someone who chooses to interact unprovoked, and then the comedian has to then pay attention to that and like snuff it out, or say, okay, this person isn't quieting down, I'll make 15 minutes out of this. And that's what people are seeing online, and that's, like you said, they're misunderstanding the whole dynamic.
Yeah, and crowd work used to be, for the majority of acts, crowd work used to be a defense thing. You would just be defending yourself. Somebody would shout something and you'd have to bat it away.
Yeah.
And it was always for most, there was obviously people like Darragh Breen and that who are just excellent at it. And
Jimmy Carr is another one.
Yeah, and they're just excellent at it, and they'll bring it on themselves because they know they can make either a full show or a big section about it. But it's changed now from being a defense thing to, because of the need for clips and the need to not put up your real material, then a lot of acts will go up and just invite it immediately and go straight into the crowd going, what are you here for? Why are you wearing a silly hat? And how long have you been together? Has anyone got any questions? Anybody want to shout at and up at me? And they're fishing for it. So I've talked to a few promoters who are like, we can't get acts to do material because they're coming in with their camera, setting it up at the back of the room, going into the crowd for interaction and trying to get a clip for their TikTok. And they can't get them to do their jokes.
Which is mad. Like, I suppose, I wonder, like, do fans of these certain comedians go online and see, the crowd work TikToks and videos and really just think, okay, that's what this act is. That's what his whole set is about. And then go to a live gig and then become very bitterly disappointed at, okay, he's not done any crowd work, and the majority of his set is just him telling jokes like any other comedian would without any interaction with the fans. And I suppose, do you think that it's it is really a misrepresentation of the stand-up act itself?
Well, it is, but for some acts, it is their full act.
Okay.
Now, like there's a guy in Liverpool called Paul Smith, and he's very good at crowd work. Yeah,
I've seen him. Yeah, he's very good.
And that's his act. He comes out and he goes through the front row one by one, and he works great bits out of that. So if someone turned up to his gig and he starts telling a story, then they might be like, really? I thought this was going to be crowd work, because he is crowd work. Whereas if someone turns up to Dylan Moran's gig and they start acting like they would at Paul Smith's gig, Dylan would be like, what are you doing? This is my set. I'm doing my set here. So it's hard for the audience to figure out, unless you actually, and not many people care enough for it to dissect which acts do crowd work mainly and which acts do jokes or stories. So it's muddy the waters a bit, and now audiences are turning up and just kind of jumping in, test the water, see does the comedian bite, when really I don't think that's how it used to be.
And just turning over to your own kind of material, I've seen some of your clips online, and to be honest, thinking back on the fact that I actually went to your house for drum lessons back in the day. God help you. I remember I told Leanne a couple of weeks ago, like, because I said, okay, I'm interviewing Ger for his comedy stand-up special, and she's like, oh yeah, would you have met him before? And I was like, yeah, he taught me drums. And she goes, you know drums? And I was like, no, I don't know any drum. I wasn't good at it. I just wanted to bang the shit out some drums, and he was trying to teach me legitimately, and I wasn't having any of it. But looking at your own kind of stand-up, because I have seen some of your clips online, it seems that you do take from your own life and stories from your family and growing up. Is that the majority of what goes into your writing, or is it observational humor as well?
Yeah, well, there's only so much you'll get out of, your family and friends and background, you'll get your first special, your first hour or whatever, probably out of that. After that, it's kind of like a band's first album. They've literally got their whole life experience to draw on to make their 12 songs. And then the second album, you've got whatever you did since the last album, which is a few months. So yeah, your first, I always tell people, if anyone's asking about like starting to write material, I'm always like, look at your life, look at your family, look at your job, just look at everything immediately around you first, because that's the easiest to reach. It's there beside you. And then maybe eventually you might be going, what's the deal with Trump? But I wouldn't do that immediately. Whereas I think now I probably more like, I literally go around and talking into my phone, into the voice recorder on my phone a lot. I look a bit mad half the time because I'll just go around and try to stay a little bit alert, so that if something funny happens, someone says a funny turn of phrase, then I can hone in on that and go, stick that into your phone. You might work on that in a couple of weeks' time, or, you've built up enough ideas, you might start working into that. So I'm literally just kind of, going around with this antenna up, hoping that something funny happens all the time. But also, I think if you just if you go with the flow a lot of the time, just in life in general, if someone asks you to do something that you don't normally do, if someone's like, do you want to travel to this country? Yeah, fuck it, why not? Do you want to go to Iraq? Yeah, we'll do it. We might get a story out of it. Do you want to do a couple of gigs in India? Or do you want to just do a bungee jump? Whatever, if I'm not going to do a bungee jump, but if somebody asks you to do something, I think if you're looking for a funny story or a bit of material, you're better off going, yeah, fuck it, let's do it. Yeah.
And looking at, like you said, that's where you start off. That's the kind of material you pull from directly from your life. And when you're starting off, how have you seen your act change since beginning this journey?
I was probably like a little bit too deadpan at the start. I think I almost made it my shtick, like just standing there in front of the mic, not moving and just using words only. And I found that like it was probably a defense mechanism at the start, where I was like, once they think I'm a bit weird, they might not hate me as a person. They don't know me. It's just an act. It's just a character. Because it kind of was a bit of a character, kind of like when you see Jack D or Stephen Wright just standing there doing deadpan jokes. It was a little bit character based, and since then I've kind of made it a little bit more me. I've just been a bit more confident, but I think it's also because if it's a bit you kind of have a plan B if things aren't going great. If you're in a character and things aren't going great, it's hard to go. But anyway, forget about that. Let's talk about this. It's hard. You kind of have to stay in your character. Or if somebody is talking, it's hard to jump out of character, ask them to stop talking, and then go back into your character again. So I think as a defense mechanism as well, I've probably gone, maybe I need to just open up a little bit and make it a little bit more about me.
Okay.
It's still kind of character based because half of it is, lies anyway. Some of it's based on truth. Some of it you're like, it'd be funnier if this happened, so let's make that happen.
Yeah, never let lies get in the way of a good story.
Or a funny story in my case. Yeah, so I don't mind twisting it, because the audience really at the end of the day don't care if it's true or not. They care if it's funny. Yeah,
they just want the funniest scenario possible.
Yeah.
Where you're at right now, how would you characterize your performance style?
Maybe disgruntled. A lot of people who come up to me after shows and say they enjoy it, they resonate with the things I hate. I go, the way if two people like the same film, they instantly have a bond. But if two people hate the same person,
it's stronger.
Hate is much stronger than love.
Yes.
So I think the sort of grumpy, not really hate-filled, but grumpy, disillusioned, sure we are where we are, or as well have to just get on with it and have a pint. And there'll always be annoyances. It's a bit like the band on the Titanic after the iceberg. It's like, yeah, we're all fucked, but sure, look, will we just play a few songs and have a pint anyway? Yeah,
because I think, looking at that anger-based stand-up, it does work, whether you stumble on it unintentionally and make it your trademark, or whether it's a conscious choice. One stand-up comedian that springs to mind is Bill Burr.
Yeah.
He's just hate-filled about everything, but he's intelligible as well. He goes on rants that you could just sit there for hours listening to, because he's so articulate with it and so passionate with it. And I think you're right, anger does bond people a lot more than loving something. I know you could talk to someone about a movie you love for 10 minutes, but talk to someone about someone you hate mutually for hours.
Yeah.
You'll always find something else that has irritated you the last time you saw them. Oh, did you see what he did today? Or did you see what this fucking idiot did?
Sending screenshots. You're
just
going, look at this prick.
Oh, I'm talking to this fucker again. Yeah.
What I like about Burr as well, though, is that he'll always kind of eventually giggle at himself and his anger.
Yeah.
He's always like, I don't even know why I hate this. And it's back on him. So he's still painting himself as a bit of an idiot who should be above this. He's like, I don't know why I want to punch stuff. And it's always his downfall, his Achilles heel. He's not going, you're all a bunch of morons. He's not that. He's like, I'm a moron and I should care less. And I don't know why this bothers me, but it does. So you can always kind of see that he's a bit of a victim as well.
I think he's used the birth of his first child very well in his stand-up act, because, like you said, his whole shtick is, at the end of the day, really, I have anger management issues. It's not you, it's me. Like, I'm just, everything sets me off. And I saw a recent clip of him talking about, he's in the kitchen giving out about some fucking blender he's using, and like he literally goes to hit it, and his daughter comes in the room and tries to calm him down, and he's being parented by his kid, saying, daddy, don't yell, it's bad for you. And he uses that so well. And even like using the interactions and relationship he has with his wife, he does it very well on his podcast. So I think that's one big example of how anger-based comedy works so well.
Yeah, but with a lot of things as well, like just having an Achilles heel is good. I think for the audience to see, okay, they're not perfect. Like no one wants to see someone go up on stage going, life is going great. I'm doing well.
This happy-go-lucky shtick does not work.
No one wants to see that. People like, even if somebody's life is going great, you might have a really you might have Nikki Glaser, who's a stunning looking woman doing comedy and really funny. You might have her on stage and the audience could be tempted to go, look at her, she's fucking stunning and she's funny, and why would I laugh at her? There's no reason for me to give up my laughter to this person. But she'll be up there going, I can't keep a man. I can't do this. My private parts look odd. And she's like, she's spewing this Achilles heel stuff where it just makes the audience go, I can see why she needs the attention. Like even if it's an act, the audience have to kind of go, we don't feel like they're above us.
Yeah, and I think that's the sign of a great stand-up comic, of taking away that divide and making you see, okay, I'm not perfect, and this is why you should laugh at me. This is why you should bond with me. And every stand-up comic will find that in their act eventually. Looking towards the future for yourself, I know things are going very well for you right now. Is there an end goal in mind? Is there like a peak on the mountain to reach?
Yeah, the peak would be quitting. Yeah,
perfect.
Yeah. If I could just finish up now, that'd be it. Well, no, kind of. As in, like I've been writing some sitcom scripts with my mate Martin over the last year, and we love that. We love sitting down and writing funny characters and funny stories and stuff. So I would love to eventually do that. I'd love to
transition into writing.
Yeah, I'd love to write for either sitcoms or comedy drama, or maybe even for other acts or something. Like I if someone says, look, you don't have to get on those planes anymore, and you don't
it has to take it out of you at some stage.
Yeah, like it's fun, and you take long breaks, which is needed because you just need to replenish. So you kind of write for a few months, then you tour for a few months, and you can kind of recharge the batteries that way. But if someone said, look, we'll pay you to write funny stuff from an office where you don't have to do any of that, and then you can see it being played out on a screen or on a stage, I would do that. Yeah, definitely. So maybe writing or even acting in funny stuff, sitcoms or something. I would probably take that over comedy eventually if I get a chance.
And earlier on we talked about, stand-up acts that may have inspired your journey and starting down this road. Is there anyone that you've worked with so far, or maybe working with at the moment, that you look at and, okay, you think that's a goal to get better, that person makes me better, or that, like, that person keeps me on my toes?
Yeah, at the moment, like working with my two mates, Martin and Keith, that I mentioned, Martin Golo, Keith Fox, because we never really let each other take the foot off the gas when it comes to stuff. Like if we run ideas past each other, and if it's a shit idea, you'll get told fairly quick, that's shit. You might have to try it out to learn it for yourself, but that's shit and it needs this or that. Or like, I think there's no point in having people around who are telling you that, yeah, it's hilarious, go for it every single time. We do dissect stuff, and I think it's good to have people in your life as well who are kind of nerdy about it to the same extent you are, because I'd be ringing up one of my mates asking, should I change this word to this word in a joke? And he wouldn't be like, oh, who cares, man, just do it. You know, he'd be like, oh, all right, let me have a think about that, I'll get back to you. So I think finding people who have the same sort of nerdy outlook on it is important. Then there's obviously acts that I wouldn't work with regularly, but I have gigged with, that I look at and I go, oh, that's great, the way they can like get 20 minutes out of what you thought was a 30-second idea. And you can see people, like sometimes I watch Neil Delamere and Chris Kent and people like that, and I'm like, oh, I would have probably stopped that joke on that laugh a minute and a half in, whereas they're now 7 minutes in and they're still squeezing it for more laughter. And I always admire that. So I try to watch as much stuff as possible, as well as writing with my mates. I try to watch as much as possible, because it's always impressive when you see somebody take it further than you would have taken it.
Kind of making a mountain out of a molehill kind of thing.
Exactly. That's kind of what you have to do. And you have to know also when to stop squeezing it, because the audience will get tired of you trying to pull jokes out of the one subject. So finding that balance is important. That's why, and I don't think I can just find that in myself. I have to see other people doing that, and I have to run that by people I write with to figure it out fully.
Well, that's part and parcel of improving your act, I suppose, is going to see other acts, and it's observation and saying, okay, that might work, but it has to be in this kind of cadence, or it has to be delivered this kind of way. So that must definitely help your act throughout. Do you find that writing in a group and having a group of people you can lean on and comedians that you can trust with jokes and trust with kind of sets, does that accelerate the writing process for you?
Yeah, definitely. But I would keep the group down to 2.
Oh yeah, I suppose you don't want.
I have a good few people that I write with, but never at the same time. I'll meet one-on-one with, like, I could have 4 writing sessions per week, and it'll be 4 different people one-on-one, because I just think the feedback is more instant. And also, if they are a comedian working on their own material, you can say, right, let's give the next 45 minutes to that idea that you have on that page, and I'll put all my energy into that idea, and you put all your energy into that idea. And at the end of the 45 minutes, we're going to do my idea for another 45, and we put all our energy into that. Whereas if you're trying to do that with a third person or a fourth person, I mean, you can have, I would just call that pints, go for a pint, and funny stuff will come out of that because you're all having the crack and it's loose. But if you really want to work on stuff, get into the nitty gritty of making a joke work, yeah, I'd just meet one person, I suppose.
Looking at other stand-up acts you've seen, because obviously, like you said, part and parcel of it is going to see other acts perform and maybe in the back of the comedy club observing. Is there any pet peeves you have in stand-up acts where you think, oh, I would never do that, or oh, that's so cringe?
I'm not a big fan of crowd work anyway.
Okay.
Like, 40 minutes into a 45-minute set and someone is like, so what about you two? Where are you from? And you're like, man, drive it home. You're nearly there. You're nearly at the end of your set. Surely you've got a joke you can go into now to, get it over the line. But if you're kind of elbow leaning on the mic stand going, what about you, sir? What do you do for a living? Like, I don't mind that at the start of the night, at the start of your set, because you're just trying to get a feel for the room. But one pet peeve is, doing that in the last.
So leaning on that to get out.
Or it kind of just makes the audience go, oh,
he's out of jokes.
Are we still here? Yeah, are we still at this point? Because this seems like an entrance point. So I'll always try and cut down on that. If I do find myself, running short or whatever, I probably think, oh, I need to fix that for next week. I can't really be, commenting on something in the room, like in the last 10% of my show. That should be kind of like driver home time,
I suppose we won't look forward to any crowd work during this upcoming set.
No, hopefully not. I haven't said that now. Someone's going to shout up at me, no doubt. But the thing about Castlebar gigs is I normally know everyone there. So I can literally just shout back at them by name.
Yeah. Listen, I know what you did last week.
Yeah, I was there, man. It didn't happen like that.
Yeah. You're a liar, and everyone knows you're a liar.
Yeah, we were there.
Yeah.
That happened to me, not to you.
Yeah. He's telling it wrong. Looking at the stand-up special, coming back to perform at Castlebar is a special thing for yourself. Is there one element of this stand-up act that you're most proud of?
I think I'm like you were saying earlier about your first few sets or your first few years of sets compared to where you are now and how they've changed. And I was saying I'm getting a bit more myself and I'm opening up a bit, and it's not as much of an act, and it's not as much like based around the immediate things around me, family, friends and stuff that I would have done previous. It's more, I think it's a bit more me, and I feel more like we always say when we wonder which bits you should be doing in the club, because you might have been writing material for a few years now and you might have done a few hour-long shows, so you're going into a club and you have to pick. Someone asked me after a gig I did in Dublin 2 weeks ago, how do you pick which, because you might be just doing a 10-minute set, a 20-minute set, and someone says, how do you pick which bits you do? And I always say it's the bits you're most excited about, the bits that when you see them on your whiteboard or on your notepad that day and you've got a little bit of a twinge of excitement about this bit, and you have a little bit of excitement about that, but it might even be half finished, and you might have another bit that's like sealed for years that is grand, but the half finished bit might be a bit more exciting. So I'd always pick my sets based on what's exciting me at the moment, and the set that I'm working on for the December gig, it's all the bits that I'm more excited to deliver and I'm happier delivering, and it feels like when you're delivering it feels like it suits your face. Sometimes you could tell a joke and even though the audience laugh, you go, oh, anyone could tell that. Anyone, who looks different to me, who acts different, they can still tell that same joke. But sometimes you tell a joke and you go, oh, I think that kind of suits me. It suits the way I look, it suits the way I talk. So I think the set I'm working on now would probably just more me, and it's just more suitable to my face and whatever else I'm giving off. So
looking at the stand-up special as well, is it just yourself or do you have supporting
Martin
acts?
is there as well. My mate Martin Angolo is opening. Might look into getting another couple of surprises because it's a long way out yet. But no, at the moment we're planning on just me and Martin. Basically, like I said, we find excuses to meet up and do shows together. But there might also be a couple of surprises. I'm working on a few things because I'd rather it wasn't just like a club set. You put the mic back on the stand, thanks for coming, and then you're gone. I'd often try to do something a little bit like if you're bringing people into a big room, and tickets are a little bit more expensive than if you're just going to a comedy club down the road. So I'll hopefully have a few things worked on to make it more than just two drinking buddies talking into a mic.
Well, you heard here, people. 22nd of December. It's something to do over the Christmas. I know a lot of people will be in town that week anyway, so if you're looking for a great night out, go online and get your tickets. Where can people find tickets online?
Either gerstaunton.com or go on Ticketmaster or go on royaltheatre.ie or basically just type my name plus Royal Theatre Castlebar into any of your devices.
I know I'll definitely be going on and getting tickets for myself and Leanne. I always love going to a stand-up gig and I can't wait to see it. Ger, thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having me, Kyle.
That brings today's episode to a close. I hope you all enjoyed it. Thank you for tuning in, and thank you again to Ger Staunton for joining me on the podcast today. I am very much looking forward to going to see his stand-up special on the 22nd of December, and I implore you, if you want a good night out this Christmas, make sure to get your tickets now. If you enjoyed this episode and want some more, make sure to go up on Spotify, Anchor FM, Google Podcasts, wherever you get your podcast from. Give it some love and hit follow for future episodes. I'm going to leave you with a promo for Ger Staunton's upcoming special. Hope you enjoyed today's episode, and I'll see you next time.
The old man would line us all up at the train station and he'd start dishing out our ages.
Ger Staunton is coming to the Royal Theatre, Castlebar.
And he just goes over to the price list. What age am I so? You're 5.
One of the country's best comedians in his hometown for one night only. Friday, December 22nd. Book early for staff parties and Christmas celebrations.
Oh, 5 again. Brilliant.
Tickets available now on royaltheatrecastlebar.ie or search Ticketmaster.
Just as well I shaved this morning.
Ger Staunton, December 22nd, the Royal Theatre, Castlebar.